UFC 268 is one of the most highly anticipated cards of the entire year, and it's finally just a week away. The headliner of this card is a fight that I've been wanting to see ran back since they first stepped out of the cage way back at UFC 245. The welterweight champion Kamaru Usman is just a few steps away from welterweight supremacy, and getting a second win over Colby Covington will just put him even closer to surpassing the likes of Georges St. Pierre. Although Colby hasn't been very active in the past year, Kamaru Usman has been making strides in his game before our eyes. Most of his rise contained a lot of dominant victories, with wrestling being his main tool. Kamaru's striking was not as developed as it is today, and used it to only set up for takedowns, and that wasn't very often that he used his striking. Usman was considered a boring fighter because of his game plans of clinching with the opponent and taking them down to wear them out, and never really looking for a finish. Usman then switched gyms amidst his title reign, and said the reasons were that he needed more attention and that the gym he was at just couldn't give it to him, and he felt like he wasn't getting better. He then moved out to Denver, Colorado to start training with Trevor Wittman. Trevor Wittman is regarded as one of the best striking coaches in the entire UFC. His most notable work was turning Rose Namajunas from a brawler to a full-on technical striker, and turning the plodding, reckless style of Justin Gaethje into one of the most best strikers in the UFC's lightweight division. Usman's improvements were immediately noticed in his fight with Jorge Masvidal, constantly backing up Jorge with the jab and landing devastating blows in the clinch, but it wasn't too far off from how Usman typically competed. It wasn't until Kamaru Usman fought Gilbert Burns that his striking improvements were noticed. Usman's hands looked the best they ever did, and although there were still holes in his defense and footwork, the jab was landing all night and looked to be an improved counterpuncher as well. Usman pretty much learned how to use his jab and his reach, and made clear strides in his footwork and boxing. He was starting to put the world on notice, and he definitely put the world on notice when he fought Jorge Masvidal the second time in Florida, where he knocked the seemingly unfinishable Jorge Masvidal out in 2 rounds, and it was vicious to say the least. Usman's stock has never been higher. The hype around him is starting to build, and he is starting to put on entertaining fights. In my opinion, he is no longer a boring fighter. His toughest match today was the fight against Colby Covington, pretty much. One that he scored a late 5th round TKO. That was very controversial. A lot of people scored the fight in the favor of Colby Covington 3 rounds to 1, leading into the 5th round. We saw Kamaru Usman tested in his striking where he was never tested before, and this was before he made all the advancements in his striking game that he has made today. If he were to lose this fight, not only will he lose the belt, but the air of invincibility would be completely gone. Of course, we might see an amazing trilogy, but the casual fans won't let go of the fact that he lost during his title run and will never consider him better than Georges St. Pierre. He has the chance to go 2-0 over his most bitter rival, and in my opinion, possibly the second best fighter in the entire division, and really establish himself as the pound for pound number 1. As for Colby Covington, this is the biggest fight of his life. Colby took a completely different approach than Kamaru since their last meeting at UFC 245. Usman defended his title 3 times since then. Colby Covington has been out waiting for a rematch that he was never really promised. Colby then decided to return back to the cage to fight Tyron Woodley. Colby would go on to dominate Tyron Woodley, but a lot of people argued that that fight shouldn't have been a title eliminating for him, considering the fact that Tyron Woodley was on a dominant 2-fight loss streak in the division. And in the fight, Colby did show us some changes to his game, but I wouldn't necessarily call them improvements. Just a different game plan and a different approach. He was a lot more patient than usual, and instead of trying to put a heavy pace on his opponent, he used a lot of kicks and a lot of timed takedowns. Takedowns was actually timed a lot better. He also seemed to improve his defense, but it was never really tested considering Woodley never really showed up to fight that night. But just like Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington changed his original gym to go train with another gym that goes by the name of MMA Masters. This gym is very unknown to the MMA world, and Colby is their first major player if you don't consider Amanda Nunes before she was Amanda Nunes. Colby has claimed that he's made a lot of strides in his game and a lot of improvements, but he really looks like he just changed up his game plan, and if he has made a lot of improvements, he hasn't shown us anything. It's going to be very interesting to see what type of game plan he's going to use against Usman. As for the matchup, we can go all day about the improvements each has made, but when you look at the fight closely, it's the exact same story. One holds a major power advantage, and the other one has the volume. Colby, in their first fight, was the more accurate striker, but now Usman has proven to be a lot more accurate with his shot selections and is now finding the off button a lot more consistently. Colby utilized a lot more kicks than punches in his fight with Tyron Woodley and was timing his takedowns very nicely, but I don't know if wrestling is going to play a major part in this fight once again. I think that this will be another stand-up affair, and once you simplify the fight more, Usman has given us more evidence that he has improved his striking game, while Covington has changed up a lot of what he does, but didn't necessarily show us any improvements. I will be releasing a final prediction tomorrow on who I think is going to win this fight, so stay tuned for that. And I can't wait for UFC 268.